Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to members of Better Body Academy and the entire world that tunes into the podcast. I hope you've had a beautiful weekend and a lovely, lovely start to your Monday morning, if it is indeed a Monday for you, or if you're somewhere else in the world joining us live from the podcast. I am super duper stoked to have you in here. So make sure you say hi in the comments so I know who's actually watching. It really helps to inspire me to know that there's specific guys and girls tuning into this, and if I can see who you are, it's even the better. So what's going on, guys? Good morning. We're going to start the episode in just 2 minutes. I hope you've had a beautiful start to the weekend, and rather start to the week, I should say, weekend. That's already gone. That's in the past, but not for me. I have the enjoyment of, in a couple of hours, going to a third birthday party, which is going to be amazing. Everyone loves that, right? It is what it is. So, guys, what's going on? How's the weekend? Happy Monday, team. Look at all the Aussies, the Brits streaming in. Lovely to have your company here, guys. Tell us how your weekend is in the comments, guys. What's happened? How was it? Was there any sun? I'll tell you what, on this side of the world, it's getting a little bit hairy in North America and Canada with forest fires. So some of the inner land of Canada, shout out to everyone in Kelowna. If there are any of you listening to this podcast, it's really tough times there. And of course, off the back of what's been happening in California and Maui, Hawaii, it's absolutely horrible. And I think we kind of take for granted what it's like to live amongst the trees, for those of us that do. It also comes with this huge downside, which obviously is, super challenging. So, guys, we're going to get started in this one in just 1 minute. Now, I clearly need to pop up the Restream link here because there's lots of people that I don't know who it is, but that's okay. I just want to say a global hi to everyone. Hello, Sean. We've got a lot of morning mates. How are you guys? Hello, Xanth. Hello, Kenny. Hey, Ash. Good morning. Nikki Friends here. Warren Todd. Look at all these crews streaming in. 24 degrees in the UK today. How good is that? 31-kilometer run followed by a day out with the family. That's cool. How good? Hey, Troy. How are you guys? I think we're ready to rock and roll into a new episode. I've really done my best to prepare what I think is an important episode here today, guys. So please, if you have any comments along the way or you want to stick around for a chat at the end of the episode, please do so. So let's get stuck into this. On the count of 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Welcome back to the Better Body Academy podcast. This is the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets, unsustainable workout programs. I hope everyone had a tremendous weekend. If it's ending now or the new week starting, let's get stuck into another Monday mindset. I wanted to first read a couple of posts that I've noticed, particularly from our new men inside our academy. And I wanted to share these and draw attention to these because when I wake up seeing these posts, it's just so fucking cool. And sorry about the language, but just for me, this is just the coolest thing. This one comes from Mani, who's only been with us for a couple of weeks. He said, "This is the first Sunday check-in. Very long time that I have woken up and felt great. 2.3 kilos down, 5 centimeters off my guts. I've been out to breakfast with my 11-year-old son. He said, I can't remember the last time we did this. It was about 5 years ago. It made me feel sad about neglecting myself and my family, but it's opened my eyes up to what happens when I focus on myself." How good's that? I'm going to read you another one, which comes from Steve in the UK. Steve said, "I am absolutely loving this. Blokes can and will always rip into one another and take the piss out of one another. But here in this group, I've discovered there is no judgment. It's such a great place and an environment and a fucking fantastic family if you will be part of it. It makes me want to do more and better myself around it. And for that, I thank every one of you. I've not felt this good in such a long time. It's a hard road, but I'm enjoying the journey." Oh, this just makes me feel tremendous. So firstly, gents, thanks for posting those. And if you do feel like this, ladies and gentlemen, like don't hold back on actually sharing it, because I think the sharing of this not only endorses it for the people around you, but actually gives you a really good feeling internally. So don't ever hold back on sharing these things. It's great. For me personally, I've just finished my largest ever outdoor run at 32 kilometers. To think that I'm kind of crafting this identity as a marathon runner is pretty damn cool, and I'm super proud of the way. And I think this is a good lead up into the discussion that I want to talk about, or have rather, with you today if I can. And that is, I want to try and demystify this process of achieving whatever goals you have into a simple 3-step formula. And I'm just going to lay out the steps. I'm going to try and keep this really simple. The steps are decide, build. Sorry, I messed it up already. Decide, plan, build. Decide, plan, build. Decide, plan, build. Okay. I liken this strategy to building a house, because building your life, your health and fitness, is not that different actually. We humans, what we do is we tend to, complicate things a lot when we're trying to achieve something that we've never done before. And the reality is that whatever you have done to this point in your life has given you what you've currently got. Does that make sense? Whatever you've done to this point has given you what you've currently got. It's really hard to acknowledge this, or take responsibility for it rather, but the good and the bad are the products of the things that you have done so far, and your life is a sum of all the moves that you've made to this point. I'm not saying that that's fair, but it's the truth. Whatever you have is a product of what you've done. Your health, your bank account, the quality of your relationships, everything is a product of what you think about and do on a daily basis. So it makes complete sense then, if you want to change things, but you're not getting what you want right now, then you need to do something different. And that different is going to be outside of your comfort zone. If it was inside of your comfort zone, you'd already know how to do it. You'd probably already be doing it. And therefore, you probably already have whatever it is right now that you're desiring, and you don't have it. So therefore, you don't know what to do. And that's the reason you're not doing it. Like, it all sounds really simple. And I think this is the reason why I feel frustrated for the person that nearly starts their journey, nearly gets a coach. And then they say to themselves at the last minute, or they talk to their partner and the partner says, why don't you just do it on your own? It's the most contradictory statement of all. If you knew how to do it on your own, you'd already be doing it. But you're not doing it, so you don't know how to do it on your own. So why do you think that all of a sudden you'd be able to go and do it on your own when you haven't done it on your own until this point? Does this make sense, guys? I'm really trying to dumb this down and simplify it. I want to give you a framework, and my hope is that you just take this simple framework and at least get started. So, little story. Let me take you back to April this year. I revisited my goals list for the first time in a long time because I needed to give myself a motivation boost. I was feeling a bit flat, to be honest, in both my life and in my business. So who's feeling that right now? Like, honestly, who will put their hand up and say, you know what, like, I'm feeling a little bit that flatness right now. My life and my business, I don't know, for whatever reason. I think it's a really good idea to go back to your goals to challenge your thinking. Now, for me, I'm a really visual person, okay? So I try to get in the habit of creating photos or images that represent my goals so that I can imagine them and feel them happening. And what I do is put them on a vision board here in front of me, or a vision wall. And I remember the day feeling somewhat depleted, right? And I was sinking back into my chair, which looks directly at my vision board because it's behind my computer here, behind the camera here, right? I had this realization that everything on the vision board here, or the vision wall, I'd already achieved. The reason I was feeling flat was because there was nothing there that was outside of my comfort zone and pushing me to level up. I was essentially living the life that I'd already imagined 3 or 4 years earlier. So why would things change when I'm always just looking at the things that I currently have? And I took particular note of something that was on my goals list, but it wasn't on my vision board, okay? It was on my goals list, but it wasn't on my vision board, which meant that I probably wasn't that serious about it. In fact, I'd had it on my goals list for around 10 years, a decade. And that was to run a marathon, 42 kilometers of non-stop running. Now, for a gym guy, that's almost the enemy. It's like way outside of my comfort zone. The reason that it was on my goals list in the first place was because it's fucking hard to do. And the reason that it's still not done a decade later, is because it's fucking hard to do. Yeah? But it was actually deeper than that. I'm not someone who turns away from hard work. So it didn't make sense to me that it was just a work ethic. In other words, it was just really hard to do and that's the reason I wasn't doing it. So I asked myself the question, why haven't you done this thing? Are you scared? And the truth is, I was scared. I was scared about 3 things that I can at least acknowledge now in hindsight. I was scared about the commitment that I would need to make time-wise. So I was scared about the commitment time-wise. I was scared about the sacrifice that I would have to make, not being able to train as much as I want to in the gym and potentially losing some muscle or physique. But most of all, so I was scared about time, I was scared about sacrifice, but most of all, I was scared about failing. The face of Better Body Academy, starting something and not being able to follow through and complete it. How embarrassing. I was scared of doing a marathon with a handful of my clients, signing up for it at least, and finishing behind all of them. Even if I managed to finish, I finished like last out of the 5 or 6 guys that are doing it. How embarrassing. Why am I giving you this honest insight? Let me relate it back to the 3 fears that I had. The fear of not having enough time, the fear of the sacrifice that I'd have to make, and the fear of failure and being judged. I'm giving you this honest insight because I know that there are a bunch of people listening to this episode right now that are not doing something because they think that they don't have the time or that it will take too much time. Let me say this very clearly. You either make time for the things that you value and which grow you as a human, and actually this is the key to happiness in my opinion. You either make time for those things or you die slowly. I made time for marathon training because I needed to do something like this to keep proving to myself that I'm far away from being ready to start dying. I'm 41 years old. I'm not ready to get into a casket just yet. I'm giving this honest insight relating back to the 3 fears that I had because I know that there are a bunch of people listening to this podcast that are incredibly confused about the process of changing their body and indeed changing their life. Like I was running a marathon. I was misguided in what was going to need to happen to complete a marathon and the sacrifice that I would need to make. I was worried about losing muscle mass as an example. Let me say this. You need an expert in your corner or you will waste years upon years trying to figure out something that's already been done a million times. Why waste your time living below the standard that you want when you can pay someone to give you the blueprint to achieving that thing now? I am a novice at cardio. I'm a complete novice at cardio. And when I consulted Coach Mike, one of our other Better Body Academy coaches, he's our cardio expert because he's run marathons, he's run ultras, he routinely goes for a 200K bike ride on the weekends. I needed a strategy to employ, and I was happy to find out that resistance training was actually part of that plan. And that if I made sure that I followed the plan and still did my resistance training, actually it might benefit me, it might improve my body fat percentage. And once I had a proper plan, I realized that actually I thought there was going to be all this sacrifice, but there wasn't. So I ticked off the fact that I did have time. I didn't have to sacrifice as much as I thought. But most importantly, I know that there is people listening to this podcast right now that are not doing something they want to do because they have a fear of failure and judgment who might come as an opinion from someone that they couldn't give 2 shits about. You're not doing something because you're worried about judgment. Let me say this. I love my clients, but I don't actually care or value the opinions of people that aren't pushing themselves to be better. I was caught in my head thinking that my clients would judge me if I failed, when actually the vast majority of them would take inspiration from me trying. Over to you. Stop fucking worrying about people's opinions or judgments. They don't pay your bills and they're not going to be there at the end. You got 80 years on this earth to achieve, experience, enjoy. And if you spend time worrying about what other people think and then adjusting your life accordingly, that is bullshit. All of this discussion has led us up so far to step 1 of the 3-step formula that I promised you at the start. Step 1 is you've got to decide what you want. Having worked now with thousands of men and women, I can tell you that the major reason that people don't get anywhere in their life and then complain about it is because they can't answer the question, what do you want? That's the equivalent of like leaving your house every day and getting into your car, starting to drive, not really knowing where you're intending to go. So instead you just drive around in circles all day, wasting time and petrol, but acting confused when you don't actually arrive anywhere. Let me break down the word decide. The word decide comes from the Latin root or word decadere, which means to kill off. To kill off. So when you decide, the idea is that you kill off the other options by committing to whatever it is that you want to go after. That's what it means to decide, to kill off. Whenever you hear the word decide, decide is a powerful word. It's a powerful word, and it's why managers get paid more than employees. It's why business owners who are successful get the big bucks, because they have to make decisions. And when you decide, you kill off other alternatives, which comes with it some risk. And there's a very big difference, by the way, in deciding to go all in, totally killing off any other option, and kind of deciding, which means not deciding at all, because you're not killing off the alternatives. Some people come into our academy, they decide to pay the membership, but they haven't actually decided to commit. And ironically, these are the people that blame the coaches for their lack of progress. I get it. To truly decide means you draw a line in the sand, that there is any alternate outcome. Like, that's a big decision. When I finally decided to run a marathon, I killed off the idea of not running a marathon. Now, even if an injury happens in the next month, I have decided I'll get through the injury and I will continue to hunt down the goal until the box is ticked. And here's a point. It's only failure when you give up on yourself. Injuries, weight loss plateaus, tough life moments, family tragedies, these are all just tests along the way to determine whether you deserve the goal that you're going after. Because if it was handed out freely, then it wouldn't have any value. Does this make sense, guys? So let me ask you a question. Have you decided? Have you decided to leave the overweight, immobile, weak person that you used to be behind you? This doesn't mean that we're in a rush to make it happen, but have you made a mental commitment? Or are you just kind of toe dipping? Are you playing it safe so you don't fail? Or are you burning the boats for your goals? Like, unless you decide, I'm sick of being fat. I'm sick of having to get on a plane and feel awkward. I'm sick of having to be sweaty all the time. I'm sick of waking up every morning and not being able to feel recharged because my sleep sucks. I'm sick of looking at my kids and seeing the look on their face when they see me give up on myself. I can't keep up. It's only once you decide that you kill off the alternative And then we can go to the next step. The next step is step 2 of the 3-step formula, to plan. Let's go back to the analogy of the house that I started with. In step 1, you decided what type of a house you want. And this comes from taking inspiration about other houses that you've been into, maybe your friends or maybe certain design studios or whatever. You collate ideas about what you like, what's to your taste. Your life or your health is going to be exactly the same. You've been inspired by how others have, you've been in contact with, are living their life, and you want to take the best from that and the best from that and the best from that. And before you start building it, you need to actually formulate a plan. For any of you that own your own home and have built it from scratch, did you just contact the builder and say, all right, I'll see you in 6 months? Or did you go through the pre-builder, the pre-contracting the builder, where you were trying to work out what you wanted, the decision process? Okay, now we've got that. We'll work with the builder to map out a strategy, and then he or she went and built your dream home. You have to do things in that order. When you created the end product in mind, then you started to get an expert to help you put pen to paper. He asks you different questions. What's your personal preference around this? What's your budget? And eventually you reached a plan that you were happy with. The same strategy is true of your health transformation. If you're not an expert in building a house, would you just wing it? Would you just go out in your new block of land and start building? Of course you wouldn't. Do you think one of the reasons that you struggled for such a period of time to get in shape is because you don't have a plan? And for those of you that don't have a plan, is that the problem? You don't know what to do. So you can't do what you don't know what to do. Perhaps you're doing what you think is right. And guess what? It works for a short period of time, like doing lots of cardio and eating according to keto. But the problem is that that's probably not going to be sustainable, that everything's going to be dependent on you running for the rest of your life, and you're going to cut out all carbohydrates for the rest of your life. That's probably not going to work long term, so it's the wrong plan. You waste 6 months trying to build your house, getting super frustrated when your house blows over like the Three Little Pigs nursery rhyme. And I get how hard it is to lose weight. Is that really hard? Do I really need to eat a plan? Do I really need a plan? I just need to eat less, move more, the weight goes down, right? Right? Is that what happens? Eat less, move more, weight goes south. Yep, that's what happens. Until it doesn't. Until you can't keep eating less and moving more up. I've said it a billion times. Losing weight, most people can do. Maintaining the weight loss and upgrading your identity into a healthy person with a good self-image that can sustain that weight loss forever, that's a different kettle of fish. Okay? Imagine me with zero experience trying to run a marathon. I go out, I start running until I get tired, I probably have a bunch of injuries, then I give up. I don't have a strategy. I can tell you, for me, this is one of the reasons, despite the fear, that I've never done a marathon. I didn't know what to do. I don't know how to prepare for it. This is also the reason why in 6 years, I earned $1,300 in online coaching. 6 years, because I didn't have a fucking clue what I was doing. So rather than ask for help in creating a strategy, I suffered trying to figure it out myself. If I quantify, let this hit for a second, guys, because you're going to look at this in the lens of your life. If I quantify how much the decision to not ask for help has cost me, I can tell you it's multiple millions of dollars over a course of years. Multiple millions. So let me make this clear. How much I fucked up. I wasn't willing to pay a few $1,000s so that I could make a few million. I saved a couple of $1,000s, but it cost me millions in potential lost money while I tried to figure it all out on my own. I eventually reached a breaking point where I paid a coach to help me with a strategy, and within 6 months, everything changed. So many of you are waking up every morning hating how you feel, hating how you look in the mirror, hating your lack of confidence, but holding on to your dollars all the while you go around the internet downloading free PDFs and watching YouTube videos, trying to piece it all together yourself and then getting more confused in the process. Have you computed how much this is costing you? Let me spell it out for you. You're earning less money because of where your mindset is, and your mindset is where it is partially because where your body isn't. The sack that's carrying you around is not working for you. If you had a strategy, wouldn't you already be doing it? It won't be until you reach the point of where the pain of staying here exceeds the pain in you investing in yourself that you actually move forward. And I know that firsthand because that was me. And I spend my time trying to explain this to people because when the penny drops, the only thing that you'll regret is starting later, that you didn't start later. I wanted to run a marathon. I'm lucky that I'm best mates with Coach Mike and he could give me the exact blueprint on how to do it. If I wanted running to be part of my long-term goal set, and it's not, but I would hire a running coach and a mobility coach to give me strategy on how to minimize injury risk because right now my knees hurt. My knees hurt because I've got shit running form. I currently pay 3 coaches to help me with my business. And for the record, my coaches all have their own coaches to help them with their components of leveling up. Let's move on to the final step of the 3-step formula. Let's go back to the house analogy. You've decided what you want your house to look like. You've done the planning, so you have a strategy. Now for the final stage, build it. This is start executing on the plan that you've set out. Don't forget the plan and start running your own race. You've done the hard work in deciding and planning. Don't abort the plan just because it got hard. For any of you that have ever built a house from scratch, let me ask you, did it go exactly to plan? I'm pretty sure that we could get 30 odd horror stories in the comments about how it didn't go to plan. There's hurdles along the way, and building your body and a better life is exactly the same. Your hurdles are going to include everything from injuries, periods of self-doubt, family emergencies, weeks when you can't 100% commit to the plan. The list of hurdles is going to be virtually endless. But remember, these hurdles are there to test your deservedness of the goal that you're trying to achieve. Because if it was simple, everyone would have it. If everyone would have it, there would be zero value in it. This marathon prep, as an example, has not been easy for me. Firstly, I fucking hate cardio. But this was never about doing something that I love. I'm doing it for the value in the process and what that teaches me about myself. On my birthday, on the 10th of June, I decided to go for a run at 4 a.m. in the morning in the pitch black. 200 meters into the run, I stepped off a gutter, rolled my ankle, thought it was pretty innocuous, ran another 16 kilometers, then come home to a massively swollen ankle and an injury that stopped me from running for a month. That hurdle was there to test my worthiness. At that point, I honestly was ready to quit. I started asking myself these questions. What the fuck am I doing this? No one cares. This isn't going to escalate me in anyone's opinion. Why am I actually doing this? And here's where I want to introduce another component to the success formula that I should mention is part of the strategy, and that is to have accountability and support in the implementation. This is what most people lack. They can get themselves a strategy, but they haven't got any support. When you've decided what you want, you've planned out your strategy, but if there's no accountability to the strategy, when you hit a hurdle, you almost certainly fall off. In my case, I was lucky that we created a small group of men in a chat group who were committing to running the Sydney Marathon. If I did not have the support of Nick, Terry, Clint, Kongi, and Coach Mike, I would have given up the moment I rolled my ankle. 100% I would have given up. 100% I would have given up. It would have been easy to hide and pretend that it was unimportant. This is the exact reason why we have a community around Better Body Academy, because when you're trying to change your habits, the most important thing that you can do is put yourself into an environment that supports the changes so that when you go home to your partner and your partner says, "Are you kidding me? What is this shit that you're doing? You've tried this before." Who knows that too well? Partner, thinks that they're trying to be honest and valuable to you, but actually they become the problem. And so you struggle to change because the negativity that's coming at you, you become the product of the people that you hang around with the most. And if you hang around with people that enable your slopper behavior and make the bad habits easier to do, expect to get more of the same. I was lucky that I was surrounded by 5 or 6 guys that were supporting me because I'm a novice at this stuff. The key point here is that building the dream body or life involves failing as an essential part of the process. And if you can move from like, oh, what happens if I fail? Or what happened to, I will fail, actually. That's what I need to do. And the failure gets me closer to where I want to go. You set the expectations at the start. You don't get sat on your ass the moment that things get hard. So I'm going to wrap this up, guys. I hope this episode has kind of given you some energy and some inspiration into perhaps what part you're missing. You can't start building the body or a life that you want without a plan. You can't start creating a plan unless you first decide what you actually want. So if you want a practical takeaway from the episode, I challenge you to ask yourself, what do you want? Do you know what you're actually trying to do here? Whether you're in Better Body Academy or not, whether you've started a transformation or not, do you know what you're trying to do? Because if you don't know what you're trying to do, it's pretty hard to get a strategy to something you don't know what to do. Do you know what you're trying to kill off? Decide, kill off. Am I clear in what the plan is? How I get where I need to go? If I'm not, reach out and ask. What's my relationship like with failure? Am I getting flawed by it all the time, or have I accepted that this is inherent in it? Those of you that are in Better Body Academy, you're not doing your check-ins, you're not coming to the coaching calls, you're not posting inside the group. It's likely that you're not getting the results you want. You are deciding to not get the results you want. Let's make no mistake. You are deciding by not deciding. You're killing off the likelihood of you getting the results you do want by not deciding, which is in itself a decision. Right now, come back and make a decision into which thing you want to kill off. Then we can get back to a strategy. And if you're not in Better Body Academy, I send you the invite to open up a conversation. Let's have a chat about where you are, where you want to get to. If we think we can help, we'll go to step 2 and create a plan. If I don't think we can help, then I'll point you in the right direction of someone that I think would be better suited. Guys, this has been the Better Body Academy podcast, the podcast that you come to when you are sick of the dumb diets and unsustainable workout programs, and I will see you in the next episode. Have a beautiful start to the week. All right, team. So we got 23 people still here. Give me your immediate thoughts. Like, when the computer gets overloaded, we struggle because it's more information that we can process. So where are you in that? Like, where are you in that whole thing? Have you decided? What's the decision? What are you killing off today? Are you willing to kill something off today? And here's a really important point, guys, is that making the decision to kill it off doesn't mean you get it tomorrow. You're just burning the bridge to going backwards. That doesn't mean that you go forward at 100 miles an hour. You may not be ready for that. It's what matters is the direction, not the speed. Guys, what matters is the direction, not the speed. Are you moving forward? If you're moving forward, great. How quickly? Doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Because the speed is going to be in part determined by yourself and what you can take on, how much you can take on. And one of the things you need to be able to integrate in your strategy is not taking on too much so that you don't overwhelm yourself if you know that you have a tendency to get overwhelmed. Needed to hear that. Awesome. Solid message. Awesome. I've decided to leave my fat self behind, but I'm still very scared of failure. Good. You know what? When anyone says something like, I'm scared of failure, like, that's a good thing. And let me tell you why it's a good thing. Is because if you weren't scared, the likelihood is that the result doesn't mean that much to you. Like, I am nervous. I'm nervous about doing a marathon. I'm really nervous, honestly. Like, when you used to play footy as a kid, or maybe netball or basketball or bloody whatever it is that you played. So I can't see who it is, but anyway, you got some of my mates before a game used to spew up. They were so nervous as like 15-year-old kids. They were that nervous. I got really nervous before games. And so it might feel like a fear of failure, but that's kind of wrapped in like, I'm nervous about what if I mess it up? Well, you're not going to die. Like let's get really comfortable in the worst case scenario. You're not going to die. Totally scared to fail and see judgment from others. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. This is tangible. So let me give you an insight that, like, it's so important that we understand this. There is no person in the world that is more successful than you that is going to judge you for trying and failing. I can tell you that 1,000,000%. 1,000,000%. There's just not. The failure is always, the judgment is always going to come from people that are like sitting under the tightrope, clapping you to fall. Why? Why does that happen? Like, why do people want you to fall? Let me give you a kind of a really weird analogy. Okay. If I said to you, is $1 million a lot of money? You would have an opinion on that, right? Maybe you said yes. Okay, so if I said to you, relative to 100 million or relative to $1 billion, is $1 million a lot of money? No. Okay? Because it's positioned against an anchor. Let's bring it back to the judgment, right? Is if a person is not able to relate their successes to someone else, how do they deem themselves successful? So what they do is they anchor to another person's failure to make them feel better. Does that make sense? Because without your failure, they feel like a failure themselves. And so you failing makes them feel successful. It's like price anchoring, except it's failure anchoring, right? So you just got to care less about the opinions of people. Like, yeah, anyway, this one here is like, I get it. Totally, I get it. Because what I talked about in the podcast was that I was scared of the judgment. But actually, you know what it was? It wasn't that I was actually worried about the judgment. It was that there was a subconscious program that was worried about the judgment. When I actually become aware of that I was thinking this way, I saw like the logic in this and went, it's fucking such a stupid thing to think. It's not even funny. And the moment that I become aware of it, it just disappeared. So in your case, when you actually rationally think about the judgment, do you actually care of the opinions of the people that you think are going to judge you? Do you really care? Like, do you really care? Because if you do really care, that's a whole different kettle of fish. I'd be asking you the question like, why do you care? Tez says, I was scared of the judgment, but now it empowers me. Yeah, because what it is, Tez, right, is when you're not actually thinking about it, when it's just a program, right? It's just in the background of your subconscious, like your brain is trying to keep you safe. Your brain's number one priority is to try to keep you alive. Fact. It doesn't care that you want to look a certain way. It doesn't care. Your brain's priority is to keep you alive, which is why we call it a comfort zone. The brain wants to keep you there because there's no risk of you dying there. There's no risk to your survival there. If you leave the comfort zone, you risk dying. This is why we have something called fear. Fear is to protect you. Fear is a protective mechanism. Procrastination is a protective mechanism. These reasons that we stay stuck, that's because the brain is trying to keep you alive, because it hasn't discovered that actually you're not about to get eaten by a tiger or a shark. Actually, you're just trying not to fail at a marathon, or you're just trying to not look intimidated in a gym. But actually, the stress response, the same two things are happening. It's just that we're so wired for survival. So now what I want you to challenge yourself with is, okay, now that I know that, is it just the brain trying to protect me? Yeah, of course it is. Do you actually care about, like, do yourself a favor, whoever it is who feels the judgment, write down the list of the people whose opinion you think will be judgmental. Who do you think will be the people? Like, just get a list out. And then once you get a list out, my guess is that actually you'll probably just go, one of two things will happen. Like, guys, do this. If you have a fear of judgment, so I'm just trying to think of, like, in the lens of what I was thinking at the time. I don't know who would I have been judged by. Maybe the guys. No, I actually don't know. This is the point. I can't come up with a list of the people that I would have been judged by. It's just like this irrational, like, people on the internet. That's it. My partner wouldn't have judged me. My kids wouldn't have judged me. So who was it that I was scared of? Probably just people on the internet, which is interesting because that's not a person. That's just a representation, right? But if you're able to now write down the people that will judge you, if you are able to come up with a list, great. That gives you something to work with. Okay, so the question is, in that list, whose opinion do you care about? If there's no one's opinion that you actually care about, then cross the line out. Like, here's the thing about fear. It's irrational. It's mostly irrational. There are a few rational fears, like, scared of heights, scared of being eaten alive by a shark. They're rational fears. But for the most part, most of our fears are irrational and just the brain trying to keep us comfortable. Nick says, I was scared of looking into the mirror and admitting to myself that I gave up not giving it a go that I promised myself when I decided. Yeah, dude. And, I think, Nick, something that's kind of not mentioned in these types of discussions is that, respectfully, you have a couple more years on your side. And, eventually, I think what happens is when you start to go through your 40s, 50s, and 60s, to a point, you give less fucks. Because, again, speaking openly, the end is nearer than it was 20 years ago. Like, speaking very transparently, it's a hard conversation to have, but the end is nearer than it was 20 years ago. So the closer that you get to your time expiry, the less fucks you're going to give. I hope that's not in any way offensive, Nick, by the way, but that's it, right? If you're 60 years old and you're still giving a fuck about people's opinions, like, holy shit, like, that is really sad. Like, I'm not critical. I'm not being critical. It's really sad. I used to care about what others thought of me because of fear, but now I don't give a hoot. Again, I think it's just an awareness that develops, Sean. I think that's the big thing. We just recognize the irrationality of what we're feeling. And when we recognize it, it's like everything. Once you become aware of it, then you can handle it. But most of us are not aware of it. So we can't change something we're not aware of. If that makes sense. All right, guys, I'm going to wrap it there. Hopefully a good conversation. Appreciate you all. Love you. See you in the next episode.